So we're just going to kick off, I think, by getting a little introduction to yourselves and who you are and what you do at the moment.
Michael, I actually grew up in East London, in Stratford, and my origin is Nigerian Ghana. So my nan moved from there. When I was in my teenage years, I grew a big love for business. So I ended up doing a business degree. However, my destiny kind of switched or changed when I ran into devoted spiritualists at my university, one of them being a good personality named Jay Shetty. And yeah, they introduced me to spirituality. And even though I thought I was going to become big in business, I ended up taking a spiritual route and spending a lot of time in India studying. But then I started to realize that those teachings that I found in and around India and around spirituality can also connect with what I wanted to do and achieve in London. So I bounced between India and London, sharing and teaching wherever I learned anew. And right now in Australia, I do seminars and workshops in and around the masculine and feminine science and relationship education as well, alongside spirituality.
Hi everyone. So actually, like Michael, I grew up. I was born in East London as well, not far from Stratford. I was born in Newham. Stayed there for very long though, and like Michael as well, I had a keen interest in business sort of in my early 20s. But before that, was trying to kind of go where the heart went and studied art and photography. Did all those things and found it quite hard to feed myself off of that after a degree. So I ended up selling photocopiers and then going into various different businesses. It ended up at Bloomberg. I was there for 9 years. Still staying in sales. I moved on to LinkedIn, and that was my first kind of introduction to something that's been with me my whole life. So I've come from a sort of spiritual background in that my parents are quite religious, family's quite religious, but always separated the two when it came from work and personal. And the first time I heard the word meditation at work was when Jeff Weiner was giving an address to everybody at LinkedIn when he came to visit us in London to let us know that he'd found this wonderful app, Headspace. He thought it was brilliant, and he thought we should all give it a try. So being somebody who'd pretty much do whatever Jeff would tell me to do, I gave it a try, put it down for a little while, and then sadly, about a year and a half later, my father passed away, and it was pretty much the only help I had on me. It was in my pocket. So I started meditating more regularly, not because I felt like that would be the answer, but it was genuinely the only thing I had with me. And I found it helped me deal with my grief, got me through a situation that was tough. Slowly, 10 days later, my grandma passed away. And then we found out, my wife and I found out we were having twins. So life just kind of compounded on us. But the strength I found through meditation seemed to just help me keep getting better and better through all of the tough stuff. So a couple of years later, I found that there was actually a role for somebody like me doing the things that I did at Headspace. And I've managed to gel the two bits together. So the business piece, but also help bring something that helped me in an extremely profound way to thousands and thousands of people. So that's me.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Carl. I'm a yoga teacher and a studio owner at the moment. I also run a festival called Exhale. Stretch is the name of my studio. It's one of them's on Broadway Market, the other one's on Columbia Road, so East London massive. I'm from Birmingham originally, so I'm going to buck the trend a little bit. And I moved to Brighton in the late 90s and threw myself headlong into the world of dance music and DJing and making records and that kind of stuff. And that led me down an interesting dark path and popped out on the other side and discovered the yoga practice. And I threw myself into that with the same sort of level of enthusiasm, but it served me pretty well. And now I've been teaching for about 14 years. I've trained hundreds of yoga teachers. I also practice breath work as well. Yeah, so that's me.
The seminars and workshops that are presented physically. I'm creating digital courses from them. And they're centered around basically 3 areas: past, present, future. So past, meaning letting go, forgiveness. Present, that's the masculine, feminine science, or dealing with how we can relate and increase clarity and peace in our relationships with ourselves and other people. And then future, that deals with purpose. So I'm pivoting these 3 seminars and workshops and retreats that I love to focus on, and creating online courses from them. But of the 3, I really am very much passionate about connecting and clarifying understanding with relationships. So yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. That's my latest.
I just having one little bit of exposure in my everyday life, in the bit that my life that's, I guess, okay to show to the public. So me being at work and doing all the things that normal people do, having a little bit of meditation put into that was life-changing for me. And I've explained roughly how. So for me, what I really wanted to do, and I guess my purpose at the moment and my real passion, is to allow more people to just do a little bit of it, and for that to be okay. And I think that when we're in a world right now where there's lots of extremes, and when you think of our journey at Headspace, so when Andy Puddicombe was a monk for 10 years, then he came back to London to practice, and to one of the things he found, and you'll get this in his book if you read his book, that it was almost harder to meditate here just a little bit than go and become a monk over in India. Because over there, you're just doing things. It's just, if you're eating, you're just eating, you're doing it in a mindful way. However, sometimes here, it seems like you have to go on a journey, be a certain type of person, listen to a type of music, smoke something, do whatever it might be to get you to over there. And if that doesn't fit in with who you are now, that's quite difficult. So you don't try. And it's kind of like, if you take the analogies of everybody going to a gym, not all of them want to become athletes. Not everybody on a bike wants to become a pro cyclist. So in the same way, you can do a little bit of meditation, you can believe a little bit, do a little bit of yoga, do a little bit of something, have it benefit you, but not go all the way, and that's fine. And that's really what I realized and what brought me into it. And my practice grew and grew and grew. I wouldn't class myself as somebody who's a deeply spiritual person or a deeply religious person, or somebody who even meditates more than, I'd say, 10, 20 minutes a day, if at most. But it changed my life in a significant and profound way. So that's really, if there's any project I'm working on, it's that. And in the main, the people I talk to don't think that way. They're actually often just people within businesses, often large businesses. You wouldn't think of meditation, you wouldn't think of spirituality when you think of some of the companies that work with us. However, the scientific benefit and the proof that comes with meditation, and something that is actually born out of deeply spiritual practices thousands of years ago, is proven to work. So if you want to increase your focus by 22%, scientists say you should meditate. And if we start with that, it's a much easier message than hold on a minute, what you're doing is wrong, maybe you should do this. So I guess, so that's my purpose. I want more and more people to just feel okay with doing a little bit, trying it, or maybe doing none, and being that's okay, and that's okay for now too.
So like I said, I come from a nightclub background. I'm of the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, rave culture, lots of people together in a nightclub, music, unison. And so I think when I formed Stretch 8 years ago, subconsciously what I was missing was the togetherness you would have in those days. And when I started Stretch, and I got into yoga, and I saw that there was a kind of countercultural possibility within it, because it was all teal and pastel colors and patchouli, and it was very much like, it's for a certain type of person. A certain type of person would engage with it, and other people it would be a barrier to entry. As soon as you put a Ganesh figure on something, you kind of it's a stop sign for a lot of people. So for me, it was about how can I whittle down the offering to the purest essence of what it is, you know, that isn't cultural, that it makes it accessible for everybody, and has with it at its core, you know, what human beings have sought for you know, time immemorial, which is to come together in ritual and, you know, to kind of to be as one, you know, in a space. And so when I built Stretch, that's what I did. When I built Exhale, that's what I did. And really what I'm interested, going back to what you guys were talking about, your purpose, what I'm interested in at the moment is changing the culture that we have with, or that's grown up out of a kind of like post-colonial British Raj in India kind of yoga, like do this, do that. You know, it's top down, it's very much top down, follow the instructions. Here's the master, here's the guru. And what I'm interested in is actually, you know, allowing people to really find the validation in their own experience, you know, to find that sovereignty, to give people back, or to help people find that again by, you know, coming back into really what it's all about, which is coming back into your own heart.
When we talk about modern spirituality, what is modern is the medium, so to speak. So that's becoming more and more modern. But the goal, and even how it's practiced as well, but the actual goal or the attitude when someone tries to expand their awareness, there's not an ancient or modern aspect to it. That's just, you could say that's a constant. But the medium's often how we, is often changed over time. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share kind of two aspects. One is, see, spirituality really deals with removing and adding. It's like a combination. With anything, like if you want to take up a diet, there's certain things you remove and then there's certain things you add. If you're going to take up a certain practice or a business practice, there's certain things you add and there's certain things you remove as well. So there was this, one of the kind of stories I like to share is about, there's, I think it was some sort of like in South America, they use something called a kumbhaka. A kumbhaka, unfortunately, is it's like a box, right? That within it, there's a banana. And that box and that within the banana, like you can see it from the outside, and there's a hole where a monkey is able to put their hand inside the hole, hold the banana, grab the banana, but the hole is not big enough to take the banana out. And so what happens is this monkey puts his hand into the banana, holds onto it, and tries to take it out of the box. And while they're struggling to take it out of the box, the person who set the trap will come and grab the monkey. And it's said that that banana is like our attachments. That hunter or that person who comes represents time. So what happens is this: everybody has a particular attachment that they hold on to, and that could be an expectation. That could be a type of concept or thought that we have about someone. That could be a judgment. That could be an attachment to fame or fortune, whatever that may be. And what happens is that even could be an attachment to our own identity or ego. And what happens is we try to hold on to that, and it's simply time that is ultimately, moving us along. And so what happens is spirituality is simply the process of reversing holding on to those various attachments, right? So holding on to this attachment of being a certain person or being a certain way, so that you can actually not be affected, ultimately by time in that way. And then so that's the removal aspect of it. And then there's also an addition aspect to it, like what Sanj was mentioning, and also Carl. There's a wonderful Sanskrit poetry or verse that goes, I think it's something like, Yat Karosha, Yat Adnasha, Yat Jahosi, Dadasi, Yat Tapasisi, Kuntaya, Tak Karusha Madapanam, which basically means whatever we like doing, music, drama, art, eating, whatever we like to eat, whatever we like to give or share, what we're trying to do is continue to do what we love, but add a spiritual flavor to it. We're trying to add a spiritual dimension to it. So, for example, if we love rapping, then we try to rap about topics that elevate consciousness. If we love to eat, then we're trying to eat in a more elevated way. If we love to, like we were saying, do business, then what we're trying to do is upgrade and enrich our intent behind doing business. Not only that, but what we use the money for, and the profits for, and the resources for as well. So whatever we like to get involved with, continue to do that, but try to find a way where we can add a spiritual flavor to it, a spiritual dimension to it. And ultimately that means that whatever we do, we try to do in a way that's pleasing for ourselves, our spirits, our souls. And if people like, also ultimately pleasing to the divine as well. So it's about doing what you like doing, remaining that individual person, but adding a spiritual dimension to it, a spiritual flavor.
The way I define spirituality, it's quite simple, actually. It's not that complex. For me, it's everything that's not your physical body. So everything about yourself that isn't something that you can see, touch, feel, taste, all of those things. There's things that you have to figure out in your mind. What we've got as in the modern society, in the modern world now, is the ability to extend that in ways that we've never had before. So we can enrich ourselves, so we can decide to be, receivers for information, receivers for the things that spark joy or potentially sadness or whatever it might be within you, and internalize that. But we can also be conduits for it outwardly. So I think what technology does, I don't think it changes, and I think this goes along with what Michael was saying. I don't think it changes the essence of what spirituality is. It doesn't really change the essence of who we are outside our physical bodies. But what it does is it allows you entry points by which to gain access to that, or even just be aware of it. So if you think of it from, as in my expertise, my part is meditation. A big part of meditation for me is just being aware that I can be something else other than my thoughts too. And that was a big epiphany for me. Like when I went through that myself and I realized, hold on a minute, there's a place in my mind that isn't thinking. Like, what's that? And then the more you connect with that, you start to find a whole other place to go. And that for me was the mind-blowing part. Technology, and in the case of apps, in the case of what we're doing right now, for example, someone can receive that information and start that path, that journey to the first time they find that place. Because I remember what it was like the very first time I got there, and I knew what that felt like. So I'd say that's really the role that technology plays, and I guess the modern part of that modern spirituality term. But as I wholeheartedly agree with Michael, that I don't think what my great grandfather felt through prayer is too different to what I can feel now through being inspired by something I read, even if it is, like, dare I say it, on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, that's the way I see it.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial, and I would say that my view on spirituality, I kind of disagree with both of you to a certain extent. I think when I first started going down a yoga route, and part of me, part of my kind of like early religious conditioning was really pulled in by it, because there was this idea that there's a better me somewhere else, that I could do these things and I would become a better version of myself, and I did that. I sat there dutifully in poses that were damaging my body, and put sandbags on my legs to open my hips and all that kind of stuff. And it was a hiding to nothing, to be honest. And eventually, I found some really great teachers, and they all popped up along the way and stayed long enough to show me and give me a pointer so I could actually walk the path myself. And ultimately it's about, for me, it's about making peace with what is, right? And I would say nothing meaningful can be added or subtracted. It's like, can you be in the moment, sit with it, and without trying to fix it, heal it, change it. And now meditation, yoga, and someone mentioned breath work, and I think this is a really big thing for modern spirituality, because the breath is portable, it's everywhere you go, everyone's breathing, and most of our breath patterns are compromised in some way, we're holding back, they all point to the same thing, that the aliveness and the majesty of here and now, this is spirituality, this, everything, the moment. We don't have to seek it. You are it, so that's where my journey has taken me, and this is why I talk about coming out of a culture of spirituality that is top down. I'm the boss. I will tell you, you are the student, because as we can see, this is subject to so many abuses of power. And the essence of spirituality, if we go back to what we're talking about, is like, it's like you were saying about being something that's outside of yourself. Well, no one has all the pieces of the puzzle. No one, I don't think anyone else does here, right? And, if we go and we get together and we realize that actually this form, this identity, this person, which is just a series of cross-conferent influences and, personality, whatever that is just like, it's an illusion, and we're all in this together. And I think this really interesting time that we're in, this liminal time, is asking us to look at that. We don't know what's happening. We can't see the future, and everyone's anxious and fearful and angry and grieving the life that they would have had, and this is a flowering of that kind of spirituality.
Is there anything in your practices, like talking about what's going on at the moment, that you have found really helpful or grounding that you want to share? Yeah.
Me,
What's going on?
Yeah. Breath work has been an absolute revelation to me. If you think about it, like, say something happens in life, there's a trauma, there's an incident, someone nearly runs you over, and you're like, you imprint in your breath, you go into your emergency tank. So many people are running around there. They come into yoga studios, they're in the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight mode, and they come in and they do the yoga, and it's like, breathe, it's free, and it's with you anywhere, right? And it's not like a technique, it's not even, it's not a technique, it's not a hacking, it's not, it's your birthright to breathe freely. And if you look at infants, they breathe without pause, and their bellies are soft and they expand. If you think about the culture we've developed, it's like hard bellies are good, hard bellies that force the breath up into the top of the chest where you're anxious all the time. The culture needs to change, and we need to go back to, what was always ours, which is this freedom to breathe and freedom to feel. And that's the thing with the breath. It's like when we want to suppress feeling, and in our culture there isn't the vernacular and the language that helps us to talk about feelings. It's like, oh, there's a feeling, it's uncomfortable, I'll squash it down with Netflix and sex and cheap holidays and loads of booze and lines of coke and yoga and meditation, right? And I sell yoga, right? I can say that. We will do that to avoid what it is that's asking to be felt.
Yeah.
Life is asking us to be alive, right? And all this discomfort, right? If you just sit with it, it's not as bad as we make up. And
Now,
It's life coming through.
I'm going to quote Brené Brown here, which for anyone who knows me will know I'm completely obsessed with her. But she talks about when you numb the bad, you numb the good. And I think that that's kind of all about what you're saying, that you've got to just feel everything.